So along the line, I'm sure we'll get to know ourselves. But as okay, kindly move forward so that we can have the seats in front occupied. So those who come later can comfortably take the seats at the back. You know the inconvenience that can be when they have to walk all the way and come and take the front seat when you came in earlier and you still took the back seat. Thank you for moving forward. Moving forward is a good thing. I'm still looking forward to people moving forward. I'm watching. I can see you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll start right away with an opening prayer.
Please, let's be on our feet as we pray. Can we be on our feet, please? We pray. Our Heavenly Father, we commit this conference into your hands. Father, it's in your plan that today the Ghana Food Conference will be organized in this campus. As all stakeholders have gathered here, Father, we want to thank you for the traveling mercies. We hope and pray that this conference will be a conference to achieve its aims being set. Father, we commit all the facilitators into your hands. Be the lead composer and lead director. Guide them, and at the end of the day, we will give you praise and honor. In the mighty name of God we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, my brother. I said we are cutting the protocol, so we are not going to do individual introductions. But Charles, you know who is here, so we are going to go organizations. So we know we have input suppliers here. Basically, we have farmers from across the country here. We have financial institution representatives here as well, but Charles will add the rest. And I'm sure the list will not grow so long that I have to take the microphone.
Okay, thank you, Martha. I think you've said it all. I don't need to repeat again. Maybe those who left out are the input dealers. We have our fertilizer importers and distributors as well. We have our research community. You've mentioned the ministry. Yeah. 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 Unfortunately, we also have Parliament. Once we have the chairman of the Select Committee on Food and Agriculture here, I think we have the whole Parliament here. So please, can we see you? Yeah. We have the minister representative as well. Can you see you? Yeah. So I think that is it.
You've done well. Let's continue then. We can see some empty seats here. It won't be fair for us to be looking at empty seats, so we need to get them occupied. So if these individuals are here, they are worthy of taking these seats, so they should quickly move here so we can continue with the rest of our program. PIFAC President, Abdul Rahman Mohammed. Let's give him a round of applause. Leave the center for a special guest. You can take the rest. Solomon Ansan, the minister's representative, kindly move up here. Don't be surprised. You are wearing the shoes of the minister today. Chairman of the Select Committee of Food and Agri, kindly move up here. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We have Mr. Ibrahim Bangura, Usiwa representative. Thank you very much, sir. Kindly move up here for me. And then we can't leave Madam Victoria, don't go out. Executive Director of PIFAC. Kindly move up here. At least there's one woman here. Thank you very much. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. So as she takes her seat, she will do something special. She will have to introduce the chairperson for today's program. And when she is done, we can take off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. I have been given the greatest honor and pleasure to introduce the chairperson for this morning's event, and actually for the whole day. It's a person that I personally admire very much, and it's really a great honor that I have to introduce her, or I should introduce her. First and foremost, she's a woman, and she's a professor of zoology. She's also a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Sciences, Arts and Sciences. Her past positions include the Dean of the School of Graduate Studies, University of Ghana. She was also Pro-Vice Chancellor, Office of Research and Innovation and Development from 2010 to 2011. She's the project team leader for a project dubbed Building Capacity to Build the Climate Change Challenge, which was funded by funders of this event, the Open Society Foundation. She was Director of Africa and Madagascar Wildlife International. She founded the Ghana Wildlife Society, and she founded and chaired the Center for African Wetlands. If you are coming, you see the signboard there. So you see, she's a powerful person. She had received a lot of meritorious awards. University of Ghana's Distinguished Award for Meritorious Services. In 2000, she was given an award in honor of BirdLife International Officer by the Order of the Golden Ark, awarded by the Royal Highness Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. She got a medal of the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds from the UK. And currently, you see her power keeps going on and on and on. Right now, she is the director of Building the Next Generation of Academics in Africa, which is a project funded by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. She is also the coordinator for African Climate Change Adaptation Initiative, also funded by Open Society Foundation. And the biggest of them all is a national one. She's the chairperson of the Millennium Development Authority of Ghana. Incidentally, she has the same name, she bears the same name with one of Ghana's powerful women in our history, not only in Ashanti history, the whole of Ghana. Ya Asantewa. Please permit me to introduce Professor Ya Ntelmoa Bedu to chair this event.
Let's give her a round of applause. We will now take our welcome address, and that will be from the president of PIFAC. Kindly step to the podium and do that for us. Our welcome address.
Mr. Chairman, the representative of the Honorable Minister of Food and Agriculture, the chairman of the Select Committee of Agriculture, the Ministry of Finance, Trade and Local Government representative, Open Society Foundation representatives, Oxfam representatives, the donor community, University of Ghana community, financial institutions, the private sector actors. Our challenges, government policies, and the future of farming in Ghana. Mr. Chairman, the role of smallholder farmer in Ghana is very important as we provide more than 80% of the food produced for domestic consumption, for industry, and for export. We produce food crops, cash crops, livestock, poultry, and fishes. We also provide jobs for more than 40% Ghanaians in the rural and urban areas. However, smallholder farmers face many challenges in their farming activities. These challenges range from low and unreliable rainfall in most parts of Ghana in recent times, the fall armyworms invasion in 2017 farming season, high cost of inputs, lack of market for fresh produce, and low prices for our farm produce. High post-harvest losses, especially the perishable food such as tomato, pepper, cabbage, and watermelon extra. Limited access to extension services, high cost of mechanization services including tractor services, harvesters, planters, and processors. Bad farm rules, difficult accessing credit for farming activities. The activities of Fulani headmen, raping our women, destroying our farms and water bodies, and killing our youth. Mr. Chairman, most of the problems are historic and several efforts in the past and present were implemented to address them. Unfortunately, they are far from over. Mr. Chairman, the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, with registered membership of over 40,000, was formed in 2005 to advocate for good agriculture policies, to address these challenges, and also to ensure the dignified lives for the peasant farmers and over 5 million smallholder farmers in the country. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, PFAC have members in all the 10 regions of Ghana, and since its formation, the PFAC has engaged government on a number of areas to help improve agriculture policies and activities of smallholder farmers. These include the fertilizer subsidy program, provision of mechanization services, improved extension delivery, access to credit, post-harvest losses, and market access. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to announce to you that PFAC contributes significantly in transforming agriculture policies in Ghana, including the fertilizer subsidy policy since its inception in 2008. We have also supported the improved farming. We have also supported to improve farming practices through training and setting up agroecology demonstration centers in some part of the country. We have also provided tractor services to our members. We are currently providing market access to our members through bulk purchasing of sorghum to Guinness Ghana Limited. Mr. Chairman, Honorable Minister of Food and Agriculture Representative, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to announce to you that PFAC is currently working towards forming Farmers Credit Union, the first in Africa, and we will soon invite you for the lunch in Techima in the Branahafo region. Mr. Chairman, even though PFAC tried its best to reduce the challenges in the agriculture sector, I must admit that more effort and commitment is needed to transform the sector. Mr. Chairman, with funding from Open Society Foundation and Oxfam in Ghana, we have engaged researchers from the University of Ghana to investigate the problems in the sector and recommend new ways to address them. We shall listen to their findings, and it is my hope that by the end of the 2 days conference, we can deliberate and agree on different ways of doing things to help improve the activities of the smallholder farmer. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of smallholder farmers, this is not to say government is not doing anything to support the sector. Past and present government initiated a number of policies and intervention to support the sector. Mr. Chairman, permit me to acknowledge the recent effort by government to transform the agriculture sector in the following areas: the implementation of flagship program of the Planting for Food and Jobs and Planting for Export and Rural Development since 2017. Plan to increase the intake of agriculture extension services to reduce farmer extension gap. The introduction of one village, one dam, one district, one factory, and one district, one warehouse project. Mr. Chairman, PFAC appreciates these bold steps taken by government to transform the sector, and we wish to once more pledge PFAC support to the transformation agenda. Honorable Minister, Representative, our doors are widely open to work with government towards achieving food and nutritional security in fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture Representative, while we commend government on the above initiatives, there are fundamental problems that can overturn the success of these projects if necessary measures are not taken to address them with urgency. The fall armyworms infestation in 2017 affected most farmers, especially small-scale maize farmers. Since the 2018 farming season has already started, we are concerned that much should be put in place to prevent its reoccurrence. Measures such as emergency funds and research to find a lasting solution. Access to quality inputs, especially seed by smallholder farmers, is still a serious challenge. Some of the seeds provided in 2017 under the Planting for Food and Jobs were not friendly to our weather. We therefore recommend the increased investment by government in the local seed industry to ensure easy access, utilization of quality seeds. PFAC 2017 monitoring report shows high level of smuggling of subsidized fertilizer to the neighboring Burkina Faso and Togo by businessmen who are not necessarily farmers. This act has negative implications on the Planting for Food and Jobs program. We call on government to collaborate with PFAC fertilizer watchdogs to avert its reoccurrence. This issue of climate change is a serious threat to food security and environmental sustainability. Government should increase investment in the support of agroecology and climate resilient farming. The One Village, One Dam project is very useful in addressing these problems and should be backed by policy for sustainability reasons. The activities of Fulani herdsmen is a serious national security issue and has caused great harm to farmers. Especially women in Ghana. Government should put steps to find lasting solution to it. Honorable Minister, difficulty accessing to credit, access to credit and high interest rate is a serious constraint and scare the youth from entering into agriculture business. Government should take the necessary steps to make access to credit flexible and also reduce interest rate for farmers. Finally, Mr. Chairman, colleague farmers, ladies and gentlemen, join me to thank the Open Society Foundation and Oxfam in Ghana for their continued support to PFAC activities and this conference. PFAC appreciate your support. PFAC also wish to thank AGRA, Trust Africa, SMV, and BUSAC, who continue to support our activities in different areas. Mr. Chairman, the representative of the Honorable Minister, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I thank all of you for making time to attend this important conference irrespective of your time and busy schedule. I wish all of you a fruitful deliberation today and tomorrow. Thank you. May God bless you.
Thank you. We move on and we take remarks from donors. They are funding. You must hear why they are funding, because they could have put their money into something else, but they chose to fund this conference. So we'd like to hear from Osiwa and Oxfam now, and Mr. Ibrahim Bangura will do that for us. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Good morning, all. Madam Chair, Honorable Representative of the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Member of Parliament for the Select Committee of Agriculture, professors and heads of department of the University of Ghana, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols observed. I'm really honored and delighted to be here this morning to represent the Open Society Foundations in this very important convening on strengthening food system within Ghana. I bring greetings from our offices in London and in Dakar to the government and people of Ghana. Represented here today from the Open Society Foundations is two sister programs. So we have a network of array of large programs, and we have here the Economic Governance Program, which is a network program that cuts across the globe. And we have OSIWA, which is OSF's West African Foundation. OSIWA is the Open Society Initiative for West Africa. We are focused in 10 countries in West Africa, including Ghana. So we are particularly enthusiastic that this convening is bringing together different actors in the food systems landscape, which includes the academia, smallholder farmers, the private sector, the government actors, civil society organizations, members of parliament, the media, and the donor community, together in one room to have a honest conversation on the issues affecting the food value chain in one of the continent's most stable democracy. The Open Society Foundation, including the Economic Governance Program and OSIWA, sees itself as a strategic partner that usually helps in facilitating this kind of convenings. And we create a platform for key stakeholders to deliberate on issues affecting vulnerable constituencies like smallholders. We are not only committed to facilitating short convenings, we're also interested in supporting the co-creation of knowledge through cutting-edge research that informs the deliberations and discussion in such convenings. We anticipate that the discussions for the next 2 days will be frank, they will be engaging and insightful, and somehow lead to a set of proposed interventions aimed at shaping agricultural policy reforms and interrogating existing flagship government programs, especially for the whole smallholder constituency, through a food systems lens. For us in Open Society Foundations, we believe that the interest of the smallholder should be at the center of government policy. We will also want to see the emergence of local food systems that respond to women's needs as food producers and engage the youth as active participants in the farming space. Madam Chair, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as a human rights-based organization, we remain committed to engage farmer-based organizations for the long haul across West Africa and within the continent. We are also very happy that organizations like PFAG are playing a key role in coordinating this kind of research and convening. Like I said earlier, OSIWA and the Economic Advancement Program remain committed and will continue to build the capacity and institutional strengthening of farmer-based organizations like PFAG and others, and give them a voice and enable them to better advocate for their members. I must reiterate, however, that the research and convening is not only about existing policy reforms, like has been mentioned by the previous speaker, the Food for Jobs program and the Food for Exports and Rural Development program, but it's also about the future of livelihood and for the smallholder farmers in Ghana. We think it is important to develop a post-conference agenda that continuously catalogues how farmers are adapting their practices to suit changing circumstances and building resilience within their communities. I would also like to reiterate that we supported a similar conference in the southern part of the continent, in Zambia to be specific, last year, where a similar convening brought all the different actors together to determine the future of livelihood for the smallholder across the food value chain. In that convening, the post-conference agenda has commenced, and our research team from the Oxford University, who are with us here today, indicate that the outcomes in Zambia are positive. Having said that, it is our expectation, Madam Chair, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, that the follow-up work at this post-convening period would begin to address some of the following issues. We would like to see more pro-smallholder farmer-based policies and market systems that promote indigenous and organic agriculture as opposed to the big interest commercial ventures. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, we'll also intend to see how much avenues explored that seek to improve the livelihoods and the resilience of farmer groups and enable them to mount robust advocacy campaigns for smallholders. We think there should be a concerted effort to mobilize sufficient resources from the state, the private sector, and build resilient farmer cooperatives to finance and invest in agriculture, especially activities that add value across the value chain, across the agriculture chain. Like I said before, we are committed to promoting women's economic empowerment, and we want to see women's farmer organizations capable of engaging government and the private sector as well. Finally, there are lots of opportunities, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, within Ghana and the continent to use the vibrancy and the energy of the youths in agriculture, especially in the downstream, that is the production side, and in the upstream, that is the value chain side in trade and marketing, using cutting-edge technology. So the youths are very vibrant in agriculture and would like to see policies and policy responses that address their needs. We are certain that the research and deliberation will speak to some of these issues that we've highlighted. I think, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister Representative, Member of Parliament, I must stop here now. We look forward to an exciting 2 days of frank and open conversations, and many thanks for your attention.
Thank you. So I have learned in the past few days that more than 80% of the farmer population we have in Ghana are smallholder farmers. What it means is, if you have a policy for the smallholder farmer, you are covering a large chunk of the farmer population, and that will transform into the changes you want to see in the agri sector. And so it's time for us. I know you're yearning to hear from Madam Chair. She's taking her notes. She will speak to you at the appropriate time. In good time, you hear from her. It's time for us to take presentation of the research on the smallholder farmer and the Ghana food system, and that will be presented by Professor Joseph Yaro and Professor Joseph Tay of the University of Ghana. Let's give them a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. So, Madam Chairperson, Professor Yainti Amwabedu, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I'm happy to start with this presentation, and Professor Joseph Yaro, my colleague, will come and take over from me after some few minutes with you. The title is The Smallholder Farmer in Ghana's Food System. By way of introduction, we all know that agriculture is very important in the lives of every country, and this research examines the food systems in Ghana with the view of identifying policy interventions that can lead to increased opportunities for the smallholder. We have just been told that the smallholder produces about 80% of what we consume in Ghana, and therefore, if you want to promote agriculture, if you want to have adequate food, you have to get good policies that will support the smallholder. So this research that we conducted with the support of Oxfam and OCY and the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana look at the interventions that can help to increase food production by the smallholder and also to enhance their livelihoods. The research that we conducted resonates with global search for a very effective food system that will be able to feed the growing population that we have in the world. As we all know, there has been an interest in promoting agriculture, and this is part of the Sustainable Development Goals. But despite the merits that come with a number of people working in the small-scale holder section, we do have some problems. Some of them have been cataloged already, and I will not repeat them. In Africa, we know that a lot has been done to promote agriculture. In fact, if you look at most of the donor support for the agriculture sector, they are directed towards Africa and perhaps Asia. This is because for Africa, we have about 60% of our population involved, or even more sometimes, involved in the production of crops, and yet we are sometimes hungry, so it is important to have policies to check some of these things. There is also a very little understanding of the food system. So if we are talking about food security, they have implications for the food system, but then we do not understand that very much. So this study examines the political economy of food production, the distribution, and the consumption. I will quickly move on to the specific objectives, where we sought to create an overview of the Ghanaian food system with a view of highlighting interventions that might lead to increased opportunities and choice for smallholder farmers, also drive sustainable production and create opportunities for all farm employment. We also sought to identify where the food system, that is the crop markets or whichever, that we can use limited resources to catalyze maximum change. We also want to demonstrate to government and the private sector how coherent policy changes, investment, institution building, and research innovation could lead to positive systemic change, and also to assist organizations representing farmers, rural women, and youth to develop an ambitious vision of what change is possible and what can be done. To do this, the research employ mixed method research design. This involves the use of both quantitative and qualitative techniques. But before then, we first did a documentary analysis where we look at the policies that have been formulated over the years. We look at how these policies address the concerns of farmers and what are some of the gaps or limitations of the policy that can be corrected. After that, then we collected the primary data, and as I said, the primary data collection techniques were both quantitative and qualitative methods. This was done in order to address the inherent challenges of dichotomous approaches. We thought if we use only quantitative method, we will not be able to hear the voices of the farmers. And if we also do only qualitative methods, people will be asking their question about what is the representation, what percentage say this. So we try to combine so that we can offset the limitations of the dichotomous methods. And we thought of covering the whole of Ghana because we don't want the situation where policies will be designed for only one region. So we try to cover the 4 agroecological zones of Ghana, the coastal savanna zone, where we select farmers around Adan area, and then we also did the forest zone. And the forest zone, the Begro area, was covered 2 communities each. Then also the transitional zone, the Techima area, and then the northern savanna zone. So this is a representation where I don't have a pointer here, but I think you can see a representation of our study communities. The forest zone, and then the savanna zone, the transitional zone, and the coastal savanna zone. By way of statistics, so this research had the quantitative component, as I said, which was a questionnaire survey. And the questionnaire survey covered consumers and farmers. So what we did was that in each of the zones, we selected 100 farmers for the farmer survey. And then we selected 100 consumers also for the consumer survey. So our sample size for the 2 questionnaire surveys was 800, 400 each. And that you see the distribution of the people that we sample. Also the markets that we studied. So you see the coastal zone, Ashama market, Koforidua Central market for the forest zone, the Chima market for the transitional zone, and the Tamale market. So here we sample consumers that were on the market to buy food on the day of the survey, and they were asked questions about their consumption patterns. In the case of the farmer study, what we did was to go to these communities to sample 100 farmers each So each zone, we selected 2 communities, and what we did was, this was done randomly to have some probability sampling element of it. And then we use a structured questionnaire to get their views on their farming activities in some of the challenges that they face. You do also realize that we also have a qualitative data collection techniques which were implemented or executed on the field. This first started with a focus. We first had a focus group discussions, and the focus group discussions were done in the communities, which was necessary for us to understand some of the issues and how the community as a whole sometimes conceptualizes some of these issues. It also provided a natural setting for people in the community to discuss their own views of issues, their own problems, in what can be considered as a natural setting. So that was very good. We did not differentiate, we did not separate women from men. We combined men, women, and young people as well in 8 to 10 participants in each focus group discussion. After the focus group discussion, what we did was to select some few people for more in-depth interviews, and this was very helpful to us. So the views of the focus group and the in-depth interviews that we did help us to get a more or less issues that went into the questionnaire. We also then had key informant interviews, and you could see over there, so we interviewed some of the people that are working in the sector, ministries and other NGOs. I move on quickly to the policy analysis, and there's a summary over here. We have seen that over the years, the government has done well by implementing a number of policies, and this followed what we will consider as policy by incrementalism. So most of the policies were changed since independence. Some of them were adding on to previous policies. Some were actually directed by funders, and a number of policies that were implemented. But most of these policies have targeted government input supply and infrastructure development. Policies which are usually directed by donors unintentionally tend to favor large-scale farming. This is because of the framing of the agriculture problem. The narrative was that, well, for us to do well, we need to increase output. And to increase output also means we need to modernize agriculture, we need to produce for the export market. So even though there were some policies that targeted the small scaleholder, such as we have the government subsidy programs and other things, if you look at most of the policies that were implemented, they tend to favor more of the large-scale farmer that is producing for the export because of the way the problem in the agriculture sector was framed. We want to produce more for export. We want to earn foreign exchange, as if that is the most important thing. So you have a few policies targeting the smallholder farmer, though, but unintentionally, not that the government didn't want to support the smallholder, but the policies ended up favoring if you take, for instance, most of the things that are coming on board recent years, production of cashew, cocoa, mango, and all these things, they tend to favor the large-scale farmer rather than the smallholder farmer. We have also noticed in our analysis that the recent agriculture policies have recognized the need to support the smallholder farmer. But even so, they are targeting the production segment of the food chain, of the value system. So they are providing you with fertilizers, they are providing you with things that will help you to produce. But the market segment of the value chain has been ignored. So farmers are producing a lot, but they cannot sell. And as we will see very soon, that in itself affects productivity also in a way. So that is what we have seen. We also reviewed the recent Planting for Food and Jobs program, which we said that is also equally associated with a focus on production rather than the focus on marketing. We will present that very soon. So all that we are saying over here is that if you look at the policy, the government is doing well. A number of policies have been implemented, but unintentionally they tend to favor the large-scale farmer. Where they favor the small-scale farmer is only focusing on what? Production. We think this is something that has to change in our policy documents. The food system, I will just, because of time, just move straight away to look. So the food system will look at several segments. And the system thinking is the fact that if you look at the food system, then you have to look at components. According to Harvey, for a system to work effectively, it means all the subsystems or the elements must interact harmoniously. So if you take the food system, and as you see over there, we have the production segment, we have the post-harvest segment, which includes the aggregation, the storage, the distribution, and the marketing. Then we have the consumption segment, which then again come to feed into the planning segment. And as you can see from some of the, I think the videos we watched initially, you will see farmers complaining a lot about inability to sell what they produce. And so we've seen that these components are poorly linked. In a sense, as I said, from the policy perspective, production is going on, fertilizer is applied to farmers, supplied to some farmers, or farmers are able to buy inputs to produce what they want to produce. They are not able to sell sometimes. So there is a gap between the production and the consumption, in the sense that the distribution segment is very badly organized. It's poorly organized. So you supply people with fertilizer they produce, they cannot sell. What happens is that so the next year when they have to produce, they remember these things, and then they may not be able to produce. So the system thinking is that it's not enough to focus on only the supply of input to farmers to produce. Because if they produce and they are not able to sell, profitability levels have declined. You have a lot of them leaving the farming sector. Or those who that will continue, they will not be able to produce more because they will still remember what happened to them the previous season. So in short, the system analysis shows that there are serious challenges with the distribution segment of the value chain. So most of the focus is on production. Marketing, storage, and all those things are left out. And that is affecting consumption. It's interesting to note, as we see later, that the same farmers that are even producing, there are times of the year that they will go hungry. They produce a lot during the bumper harvest season. They are not able to sell. They are not able to store, even for their own consumption. And then they will need food in the other season. So these are some of the limitations we identify with the food system. Let's look at the production unit. Then I'll hand over to my colleague. So with the production section, just by way of description of the characteristics of the farmers, we found the average age of the farmers that we sampled to be around 42 years. This is not too good, but it's also not too bad. What this tells us is that we are not having so many young people going into farming. But of course, the age as we see here is not too high. So at least a medium age, which is both positive and negative. The level of education was a serious problem. That it was worrying to realize that a majority of the farmers did not have any form of a formal education. This ranged from 71% in the northern part of Ghana to about 12% in the eastern region. Only 15% across board of all the farmers have some form of tertiary education. And we don't think that that is good. If you are talking about technological uptake, farmers should be able to read and write. So it shouldn't be the situation that we mostly have school dropouts going into farming. It means that more has to be done to make farming attractive for the future of agriculture. We found very interestingly multiple sources of income by almost all the farmers that we interviewed. But then 92% of them indicated that crop production is the major occupation that they were, or major source of income. The multiple source of income is good because if you are talking about diversification, we have seen that some farmers are actually, most of them, I think about half of them, still rear animals, even when they have. And that is a form of insurance they themselves are using. So we've heard stories where people are keeping animals who on a year that the crops have failed, they are able to sell their animals. Or when they need to pay fees or an emergency, maybe a health situation, they just get some animals to sell, which it is good. And I think that signals what the private sector can do or what the government can work with the private sector to do in form of diversification. We've also seen some farmers who were also involved in trading, which was good. Either it was done seasonally, so especially those in the north, for instance, some can get down during the time that they are not able to produce because of the climate situation. Or women farmers, female farmers in particular, were also involved in trading sort of. And those that were able to combine farming with something else were able to get more money. In fact, their livelihood security was stronger. So we found also that the smallholder farmers produce a lot of crops. The average was 2. In fact, it was higher in the forest zone, the Techima and the eastern region, where on the average farmers were producing about 3. That was also a calculation to deal with crop failure. So if one crop fails, they are able to get, or they are not sure of which of them is going to give them the market the following year. So they try to do that. I need to be running now. This just shows the crops that are produced in the sectors or in the various climatic zones. I think we do know this already, so I will not waste your time already. So what determines what farmers produce? This is a very important question to ask, and it's good for policy. So we realize that across the various ecological zones, a lot of factors are important. We have the climate, so climatic variables, soil quality, all those ecological conditions as we have talked about, marketability are all important considerations when you are talking about whether I'm in the north or I'm in the south. But within each region, farmers actually base their decision on marketability and profitability and nothing less. You could see over there a lot of quotations over there. So somebody, for example, said that we all grow some crops because of the price and market availability. And then that was somebody said. Another say I consider the price available market and my household consumption. So here, both price available market and household consumption. What this means is that even though they will consider other factors, if you give them input and then they produce a particular crop, there is no market for it, they are not likely to produce that crop again. Because the farmers, even though they are considering consumption, they know they can also, with the money, they can buy. So some of our focus group participants told us that they want to produce more vegetables because vegetables give them high. In Adan area, where cassava used to be a major crop that they produce, most of them have stopped the production of cassava. And they told us it's not because the soil cannot support cassava, but they can't sell it. They don't make any money. So policymakers should have to still look at the marketability rather than just the mere supply of what input. So that is very important. Because of this, there have been changes, and we saw across board in the greater Accra area, about 27% of them did indicate that they have changed within the last 5 years what they used to produce. As I said, they used to produce cassava and other things, but they are all moving towards the production of vegetables, which is also perishable though. But if you are lucky and you get a good market, you're going to get a lot of money, which is what they consider most. Land acquisition issues were also looked at, and we've seen over there that if you look at the figures there, most of them are hiring the land to short the leasehold, for instance. So, and that is very high in the other regions, but very low in the northern region, where about 81% of them, or about 82% of them are using inheritance. So the dominant form of land acquisition in the northern region was inheritance. All the other regions, the leasehold or the short-term leasehold or the hiring of land is the dominant that they use over there. We talk about land challenges later, so I will skip this there. Use of machinery was also looked at, and we found over there that in the northern region and the greater Accra region are the places that they use a lot of machinery in the form of plow and the tractor. The proportion of farmers that use this in the eastern region is very low, and this is understandable in the forest zone where they don't normally do plow and other things. So these were just figures to show the use of specific kind of farm machinery. So, but most of them, another issue that we had to look at, only 7% of them overall own the machinery they use. When we aggregated all of them, 93% have to rent it. And we see very soon how this poses challenge because they have to get money up front before they can do this. The type of support received from government was found to be very low. So even though government is doing very well, the fact that we have so many farmers means that so many of the farmers do not get any support. So you see whether you are talking about fertilizer or whatever you are talking about, that government is supplying. If you look at the figures there, financial assistance was just less than 14% of farmers had ever received that, at least within the 5 years before we did. And that was higher in the greater Accra region. Apparently, this is a region which is closer to financial institutions. But when we come to general extension services, that is quite high. That is something that we have observed is very high in the eastern and the Brong-Ahafo region where you produce cocoa. So extension services tend to move towards the cash crop areas. Perhaps it tells you again that our focus is more on cash crop. Very low in the northern region, 7%, and then very low in the greater Accra region. Training even on pests and diseases, again, eastern region 65%, Brong-Ahafo 37%, northern region just about 7% of those we interview. Again, focus on the cash crop. Training on marketing, again, you see eastern and Brong-Ahafo very high. Training on use of fertilizers and chemicals, again, eastern and Brong-Ahafo. In the greater Accra, just about 2%. So again, it tells you that we are focusing more on the cash crop producing areas than the full crop producing areas, which is not good as a country, and we will want to look at that. Even the support under the Planting for Jobs and Food program, that is the only one that we didn't see clear variations across the regions. In fact, it's very low, so we have just about 18% of farmers. So this is something that is a flagship program. But if you are talking about the actual number of farmers, again, it's because so government has released support for these, and the farmers are mainly, in some of the places you see, they didn't receive much. And when we look at what they receive under this program, mainly fertilizers, and then again, what? Seeds. Again, the farmers complain, and I'm happy that somebody has talked about that already, about the problems that they have. So you see some of their complaints on the Planting for Food and Job program. So some are talking about the quality of the input that they receive. And they think it's not the same as what they buy from the market. This may be a case that maybe government has given the supply contract or whatever to a company. It is likely. Or it may be that the farmers just have that perception. We don't know. But at least we didn't do any quality tests ourselves. But that is what they were telling us, that they are not satisfied with that. Some are also not satisfied with the payment. So they said initially they were told they can use their crops to pay, their produce to pay. Now they've been asked to pay in cash. The farmers in Ada complain that this they think is not, in the northern Ghana, complain that this they think is not very good. So these are some of the issues. A few of them indicated though that the fact that they receive input is good for them. So it's not as if they think everything is totally wrong. Things are good for them, but they think they should be consulted in the choice of the input, in the choice of the fertilizer, in the choice of the seed. That is what the farmers think they should be. Then we have looked at a few challenges that farmers face, which will be my last section before I hand over. So lack of access to credit, we do know that this is a major problem. So about 14% of farmers reported that they benefited from government financial support. The rest said they did not benefit, and this was a problem. And you could see over there they had to then depend on microfinance institutions, interest rate very high. They also sometimes had to borrow from informal money lenders. And the informal money lenders, some of the stories we heard was very worrying. You could just borrow maybe for just at the planting season, you just borrowing 3 months and you have to pay a double of what you borrow. In fact, the informal market has nothing to do with calculation of interest to say per annum is 12% or 50%. No, you just take the money, even if after 1 month you need to pay, you bring a double. That is a simple calculation in the rural economy. So some of this, it means that some of the farmers, whether they make profit or not, they need to give a double. One account in the Ada area was very interesting in the sense that, so even if you borrow the money for just 1 month and then you've gotten the money to pay, the double payment, which is that is 100% applies. So it means without support to farmers, they are suffering a lot how to get money to do the other things. So you see a statement over there, especially during the planting season. They also talk about low access and poor quality of inputs. We've talked about that already. A lot of issues were talked about over there. Some of them say they find it difficult to access high quality farming inputs. Some because they don't have the money to pay, so we cannot talk about that. Some because of the distance they have to cover. Some because they are waiting for the government supply of fertilizer, and that delays. You see a quotation over there, late arrival of subsidized fertilizer, which is a problem. So one person says government subsidized fertilizer doesn't come on time. which forces some of us to go and purchase fertilizer elsewhere at a higher cost so that we can be in line with the season, because the farmers are calculating in such a way they need to plant early so that they also get what? The good market. And if they are waiting for the government subsidies, fertilizer to come and it doesn't come, it means that they have to force to look for the money. So this is another issue that was talked about. Poor quality of input was a problem. I think in our previous research we hammered on that, so I will save time on that. Environmental changes was mentioned. We had expected this, where most of them are rain-fed agriculture and it's not rain. See a number of quotations over there where the fluctuation in the rainfall, on the onset of the rainfall, is a major problem. Soil quality issues. And this would have meant that they will have irrigation facilities. But we saw in some of the videos that we show already how it is difficult for them to depend on irrigation facilities. High cost of land was a major issue over there. They have to pay for the cost of land at the start. You have to hire it. If you want to use the land to cultivate vegetables, then the cost is higher. So it's not that you just need to hire land at any cost, but it depends on what you want to use. We saw that at least in the eastern region and the Techima area. I would have seen that I don't understand why this should be, because the land is a land. But then the person hiring the land is looking at the profit that you are likely to make. And we have seen over there that that is a problem for them. So some are paying on the average about 100 cedis per acre per year. In some places, it's not actually a year. It will end up maybe per season, and they have to pay that 100. So if you look at farmers that are struggling to get money to feed themselves, and they have to cover this money at the starting. They also say this makes it difficult for them to invest into the land. So we will have some dugouts, for instance, which will help you to supply water. If you are renting the land, you are paying so much for it. Once you invest into it, you are not sure that the next year the landowner is going to give that land to you. So these are other issues about the cost of the land. They also face challenges of farm mechanization, and the Ghana government has done a lot in terms of provision of tractors. But we still have serious problems with this. In some of the communities in the north that we study, they didn't have the tractor in the community. And so you had to make arrangements to get a tractor from the nearby community to come and plow for you. In the other communities where the tractor exists, you still need to pay for them to start the plowing for you, because we don't have programs that allow farmers to have a free tractor to plow for them that they can pay later. So I think this is something that we have to look at. And in Adan, they told us a very nice story. So the tractor man, who is a private man, is looking for the money. And if he's your friend, he can give it to you sometimes on credit. But at the planting, when the planting season starts and everybody is on him, he's looking for his money. So even if you are a friend, you can't get that free credit at that time. It means the poor man will have to wait till the tractor man finishes for our other people, by which time he's not going to get a good market. So this is something that private sector people and the government may want to look at. Inadequate essential services, we've talked about that already. The government is doing well, especially in the non-cash crop production areas and especially also remote areas. It may be that we have extension officers in their communities, but maybe they are not doing as they are expected to do, or they are overwhelmed. Some of them that we spoke to said they are overwhelmed. Some of them said they don't have the resources, especially traveling from one community to another in the remote area. So that is another. Then the post-harvest losses was much, about almost 70% of what the people produce in terms of perishable crops are sometimes lost. Look at some of the quotation. Somebody said it depends, but you can lose up to 70%. We're talking about tomato producers, for instance. And sometimes they just allow their crops, what they produce, just to go. They just leave it there. Because the women are not, the traders that get to the market are not able to buy. They don't have, these places don't have markets. Traders have to go there. And the traders that go, they have to determine how much they are able to buy. Sometimes they just give the produce to them. And then the following week or following month or whenever they go back there, they pay them. There were situations where they gave the goods to the traders and they never go back to those villages. But the farmers have no choice. So they have in their mind thinking that, and that is linked with what? Marketing challenges. They have in their mind thinking that they are being cheated by the traders that go there. If you look at some of the quotations that they made, they have in their mind that the traders are cheating them because they determine how much they will offer them for their goods. These are some of the constraints that they face in terms of marketing. So lack of market access or the prices offered them are low. I think that was cited by many people. Bad transportation network also work over there. They can't transport their produce during the rainy season, and this is because they don't have good roads over there. So a number of market challenges mentioned over here, and as you can see, the last one say they cheat a lot when they buy from your farm gate, and then here they mention some of the differences. Somebody also said the buyers are complete cheaters, so it will be good if the government steps into buying the produce. So you see, all over the years, we are focused on the marketing of cash crops. They have guaranteed price. Food crops, we have not focused much on. Farmers are producing. Some of the time, they just have to leave everything to go with, and these are some of the problems that we look at. With all these challenges, there are opportunities, though, in the production sector. A few of that we have a lot of people into farming. The population in the rural areas is still quite high. These are opportunities. The Ghana soils or the climate is very good. We have different climatic zones that support the cultivation of various crops. So these are opportunities. Wage levels in rural areas are very low. So in fact, if you are investing into farming in the rural area and you have the right incentives, you can make good profit. There's also opportunity for farm mechanization. We do know our terrain as against terrains in other countries, almost flat land in many parts. Again, despite the fact that the farmers were complaining about marketing and others, majority of them think profitability is going up, and that is a good sign that even though they are facing challenges, if they are able to manage this, they can make more profitability because we have a large urban market now for consumption. So getting the food from the rural area to the urban area will be very useful. On this note, I hand over to Professor Joseph Yaro, who will take us through a few slides.
Thank you very much, Joseph Tay. Now it's not the term of Joseph Yaro. So, I hope no one is sleeping. Yeah, maybe you can wave at me so that I'm sure that I don't have an empty room. Okay, so now I'll move straight to distribution. When you produce a food, you have to get it out to the consumer. And the consumer doesn't come to your farm. Your consumer gets the food from someone else. How does it move from your farm to the consumer? What are some of the problems that we have? What are some of the opportunities that this area has? Is this area the main hurdle to agricultural production? Is that the area that is orphaned by government policy? From our study, the food distribution component of the food system is mainly controlled by the following agents or actors. We have the aggregators. We have itinerant traders. Of course, they are not just unpurposeful movements. These are people who know where what is supposed to be found, at what prices, and at what times. We have market queens. Of course, market queen can be either an aggregator, but that's the term that Ghanaians prefer to call women who are into high time, big crop, food crop buying. Then we have retailers. Of course, retailers, you have, these are sub-traders in markets. Retailers also can be supermarkets, right? All these are under the main aggregators. They are found at destination markets, and they are the contact persons for consumers. Interestingly, there is an increase in street vending these days, and the various district assemblies, AMA, everything, they are having a big trouble dealing with street vendors. That right now you're beginning to have food. You know, I don't know how many of you have seen the boys, you know, with yams, you know, on the streets. You know, you even have onions, right? And another form of street vending that has just emerged is the occupants of pavements. You know, where we are supposed to walk. All those areas have become, you know, avenues for small-scale dealers. They basically pick just one basin of, you know, tomatoes, and that is what they sell. And these are important. They are very important in the chain, right? And we have hawkers who move around houses, right? I buy my vegetables from a hawker who comes around, knocks at my gate, and it's very convenient. So all these are very important actors, and we need to see how they interact. So basically, we have the middlemen, of course, pardon me for my gender insensitivity, middlemen who facilitate the distribution process. Now, basically, what they do is they purchase crops directly from farmers, and we have farm gate purchases. We have got the periodic markets. Periodic markets are the most important, because most farmers will perceive that if I'm selling out the farm gate, what if I'm making a loss? Let me also get to the market. And the periodic markets are those closest to the farming communities. So, and the wonderful thing about Ghana or tropical Africa is basically the fact that periodic markets are closer to the rural populations. And you have even small villages that have got periodic markets everywhere across Ghana. Now, a new trend, a new group of actors are agents who supply hotels and restaurants. And some of these guys are university graduates who have come out, with very good business models. I have one of my students who supply some restaurants on campus. And these are new actors, and they move to farmers and provide a new source. And, of course, you have big actors in there. You have Nestle Ghana, you have Guinness Ghana, right, who are even involved in outgrower arrangements for farmers for millet and sorghum. So, also the same as the poultry industry, who are sourcing raw materials from farmers. I think this diagram will do justice to the whole of the presentation for food distribution. So you have the producers. They are you guys, the farmers, right, of a few large-scale farmers or medium-scale. Actually, in Ghana, when you say large-scale, there is a whole confusion about who we are talking about. Most large-scale farmers are people small-scale farmers describe as having stepped out of small scale into something bigger than they are. Right? They are considered large scale. So even when government is talking about large scale, they are interested in those in cocoa farmers who are somewhere 50 to 100, right? Not the kind of large scale farming that we talked about when it came to acquisition of large scale lands, from 2008, who are normally in thousands of hectares. Not that group. So the large scale that the previous speakers talked about could be from 50 acres upwards. And if you take the mango sector, if you take oil palm, that is basically what smallholders would describe as large scale. We could have a whole debate on that, but it's good to categorize this in the context of the country. So producers, small scale holders, the emerging large scale, then the real large scale. They are up there. They produce, market agents go to them. These market agents then also deal with itinerant wholesalers. But you can see at each level, for each actor, right, though you might have a vertical link, they also have horizontal links. They have their suppliers at the sides. So the producers at the top, also, they produce first for their homes, right? They produce for the immediate community. You have got home consumption, local markets, and you have a hospitality industry that is beginning to source. So for instance, we have got a restaurant called Asmera, and they go all the way to Eastern region, all the way to farming communities to buy purposely from farmers they can trust. Then you have the hospitality industry, of course, being supplied by market agents. You have the supermarkets, it was nice to see that even, what do you call it, at the Accra Mall, what's the name? ShopRite has some Ghanaian pineapples, right? I think probably that's the only thing I saw. I don't know about most of the other fruits are from South Africa and what have you. Then, of course, you have the itinerant wholesalers who are dealing with street vendors, right? Roadside stores, roaming vendors, and of course, but that is the terrain for retailers. But at every level, you have got some cross-cutting, activity. So we don't really have a very smooth system, but at least you can associate particular agents with particular consumption base. Now, an important one that we put on the right-hand side is the food processing industries. And this can either be regional or international. And this is the poorest, the most undeveloped that we have on our food chain. I'm sure many of you remember Nkulenu, right, industries. These are all dying. They are all dying, right? Very few of them are viable. Many of them are based on the order. You have to order before they even produce. It tells us that we are in very bad shape. Now, just a simple illustration. Take plantain, Just to give a vivid description of, one of the small chains. Now, this is the main crop in the eastern region, right? Main food crop. Now, what do they do? How do you market this? The communities that we dealt with basically have a periodic market in the Ahoma, Ahoma. Okay, let me just say that Ahoma market, right? Now, this is normally brought to the market by farmers or by the aggregators. Aggregators could be, now take note, the term an aggregator can be confusing because it can be a huge guy. It can also be a village lady who goes around and buys, from different people. Now, this is sold in bunches to itinerant traders who come from Ashaiman, Tema, and Kufuor market. So every market in Ghana tends to have buyers from all other markets in Ghana, which is really good. It tells us the level of integration of our markets, that we are not locally or regionally based, right? So in Techima market, you have traders even from Ouagadougou, right? From Mali, right in Techima market. It tells you that ECOWAS protocol seems to be working in a way too. Now this plantain is then supplied to other market vendors, to retailers, to bar operators, restaurants and hotels in the main urban centers of Accra. So the link is quite unidirectional, but the actors are multiple. Now look at tomatoes from the Ada area and also from Begro. Tomato seems to be one of the most profitable crop, and it's also at the same time one of the disastrous crops. So you either make money or you hang yourself. So you have Techiman also growing tomatoes, you have Eastern region growing tomatoes, but you have the big guys who are the Ada guys. And mainly, farm gate purchases seems to be high for tomato. It doesn't really make sense unless you're a small producer, you sell all your tomatoes at the farm gate. And especially where you have a group of farmers in a particular valley, and valleys are normally used. In a valley, it means that they all harvest, right? And then they call the buyers to come, and they come with their Kia trucks, load up, and move away. In the case of those who grow in the wet season, where you have challenges of roads, the tricycle, or what they call motor king in Ghana, has become the champion means of moving goods and services. Now, traders, as my colleague Joseph talked about, are often demonized by farmers. But let's look at it critically. Is it really exploitation, or are they also fighting for their own survival? Because many traders, at the end of the day, if I buy your wares, now take note, most of these wares are perishable. You have the yam traders, you have tomatoes, you have cabbage. All these are the profitable areas, and these are the profitable crops that we urban consumers want to have. So as a result, these traders would often provide you with a price that would hedge, right? That would be an insurance against the possibility of a whole truck being lost. So you can imagine the calculation they put in. And there again, it points to one thing, processing. It points to storage. It points to the transport system. And it even points to one thing, delays on the road. Most delays on the road, according to drivers, has to do with police. It has nothing to do with the nature of the roads. So first of all, we have got price fixing, right, that the farmer has no say. We have flexible oral contracts that are never kept. We have got a primitive strategy that are used by traders, very horrible strategy of waiting for produce to start rotting or to show you a lesson. So next time you will be forced, and I call this arm twisting. Then you have pre-financing of conditionalities, and that is enslaving the trader. So the big things that we find big corporate, international capitalist organizations doing is the same thing you have small traders also, So it's basically like a kind of mentality that is passed on. You have international supermarkets, right? You have got the vertical value chains that are basically using the same strategies. So the challenges in distribution were already discussed by my friend. Poor road network, high perishability, right, as a result of lack of, then high interest rates, right, storage, and police extortion and harassment. I mean, when you travel, you are so lucky you are in a private car or a bus, and the police just, they stop you probably 4 times before you get to Kumasi. But for these food guys, they are stopped almost every 5 kilometers, and that alone is a problem. And of course, problems with accessing international markets. Upon the fact that we have joined, we are supposed to be globalized, right? The markets are open. All our government programs are supposed to, get us into into international value chains. It doesn't seem to be the case. It only works for our cocoa, for our oil palm. In any case, if we did not even implement those policies, tell me, they still want to eat chocolate. They will come for the cocoa. So it simply meant that our emphasis on the crops that we are actually promoting should have been shifted to those that we can actually get in and make more money, such as vegetables, which are easily banned, fish, which are easily banned. Almost all the time we have bans. Then, of course, so one of my main worry was, can traders trust farmers? Why? Because there's poor financing by the state, by NGOs, by microfinance. The only guys we have available now are traders. Because traders want to promote farming, because if farming goes down, they go down. And yet, when they help farmers, farmers do not keep to their bargain. But just as you saw, when farmers, provide credit to traders, right, they don't also return. So how do we build this trust? And as I said earlier on, market integration seems to be good. I mean, spatially, we are well connected. And this is as a result of the huge infrastructural gains that we have made in this country over the past 15 years. Beyond that is the fact that seasonality actually necessitates that we trade with each other. You have different regions producing cassava at different times, and since we want your fufu, you still have to get cassava from Ashanti or BA to Eastern region. Several opportunities abound. I think this is the subsector of the food system that we need to leverage on, right? Now, distribution, I think, promises the most employment opportunities that are attractive to the youth. Take note of the word attractive to the youth. You don't want them to go for a hoe when you've already taught them that, right, you should be moving away from farming to something much more better. So distribution seems to be, since we have realized that the farmer is capable of producing, so therefore, let's leverage on where we have the weakest links. Storage systems, will you believe that in the small village of Kadia in northern region, you have investors there. When I say investors, these are just simple farmers who are building small warehouses of 14 by 14 feet, and they are making money. They are seeing that this is an avenue for making money. Please, where is our buffer stock company? Small farmers are making money, right? Then beyond that, I think we have greater export possibilities still. I'm not debunking our neoliberal entry. I think still there is a lot to be made there. We have China and others opening up their markets, so probably you don't have to fear so much of the bans you get from the EU. Now, there's, however, a strong need to regulate the markets and streamline relations between farmers, traders, and transporters. We cannot leave the system open. And I think this is where the government must act, and the government should not be afraid to act. Now, what are we eating? You and I, we are the consumers. What are we eating? It is our consumption decisions that defines the agricultural sector. If we make the wrong decisions, we destroy agriculture. If we make the right ones, we make the farmers smile, we improve on their livelihoods and food security. So basically, as you can see from this table, what do we eat in the regions of Ghana? And as you can see, grains up there, right? Greater Accra, 50%, Eastern 30, 28, 56 for Northern. So Northern regions, that is where we eat the most maize, millet, and what have you. Then tubers and sakes. I mean, that's plantain, yam, cocoa yams, and what have you. And that is where you have the Eastern region, coming up very strongly. Then, of course, vegetables. Now, who is eating more vegetables in Ghana? This was, the term vegetable is quite broad. So you find out that Northern region, initially we thought this was a mistake. No, but we realized that no, I mean, even bean leaf is vegetable, right? Alefu is vegetable. So it's not just salad, cabbage and whatnot. So you find out that even northern region is doing very well. But in terms of fruits, right, what do we see? In terms of fruits, we find out that Accra, strangely, where I thought we should have had a huge market, but I think it's because of the selection of Ashaman market, right, and also the type of consumers compared to probably if we had met some of the elite, maybe you don't go to markets. That is why we did not capture that, you know. All right, then, please, this is important because then this helps all of us to think, so what is the way forward? Look at each region. We want to find out, right, what is the origin of the foods that we consume? And imported, right, dark, other region, right, and then local being red. And I'm so delighted that in the various regions, we are eating overwhelmingly our own foods. Now you find the green from other region, which shows the seasonality, right, and the complementarity of different market segments. But then Accra, of course, you don't expect Accra to, you know, show, even though we have huge farmlands in Accra, right, but that, as we showed earlier on, they concentrate on vegetables and high-valued, you know, products. But Accra tells you that almost all their food comes from other regions. And then, but in terms of imports, Accra and Brong-Ahafo, right, and Eastern region was very high. But when you probe Eastern region, you find out that 80% of the 23% is rice, mainly rice, right? Indicating that, showing the importance of the intrusion of rice into the local foods. Now, let me just, okay. So, what do consumers not like about locally produced foods? This is a very important question. Because, so for the farmers, listen carefully because this will direct what you do next. And beyond that, of course, this should direct what policymakers should do in order to make Ghanaians eat Ghana. And here, as you can see, the quality, poor quality, right, is the major concern of our consumers. And poor quality, almost same percentages, right, across board, right, except in BA, which is a little bit, you know, right. Then, of course, beyond that, you have issues of unreliable availability. Now, if you look at the percentages, you might, you'll get it wrong because it is across, right, the regions, not. So look at the absolute numbers. So poor taste, not that many, right? Poor packaging, wow, 116, right? That's almost a third of our sample. And of course, you all know poor packaging. When you go to the market, they put in a lonka, right? You know, push it onto some black rubber for you. The sack from which it's coming from, even the store, market store where it is, you know, kept, it discourages you. Compared to if you go to buy, what do you call, lele rice, right? You know, the store looks really wonderful. The pack comes out. You have another rubber inside. It's probably, you know, I mean, you don't find weevils. So these are some of the things that consumers are talking about. And most importantly is high level of perishability. That over the past 10 to 15 years, Ghanaian agricultural produce are beginning to rot faster than we know them. And the farmers at Nankuma, for instance, said their yams, those of their members who use fertilizer, no, herbicides, right? Herbicides to clear before they produce the yam mounds have high level of perishability compared to those who just use a normal burning. Even though we hate burning, we tell them not to burn. But if they burn, probably it's much better than using herbicides. So we always have to look at the alternative. What is the counterfactual? So this is an increasing problem. High use of chemicals and its relationship with perishability. I'm not very sure about varieties. Probably the agronomists will tell us whether the variety matters or not. So, but as I said earlier on, this is a summary of what I've already said. It's really wonderful to see that many of us are still consuming food produced in Ghana. However, it's worrying to see that there is an intrusion of high levels of interest and growing taste for foreign foods. And of course, admiration for the refined and the nice looks. An old lady in Tamale told me the other day when I was going there that, oh yeah, buy me white rice. I said, what is white rice? I eat local rice. And she wants white rice. I said, come on, you belong to a generation that should, you know, help us promote. She says, no, 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 she's eaten that all her life. Now she wants white rice. So, of course, a few of the imported products that we have now are mostly meat and dairy, vegetables, and some cereals. And the cereals we all know is rice and wheat for our bread. Now, the reasons for consumers preferring imported products were mainly of one, for quality, right? Very good packaging, standardization. Standardization, I repeat that again. The fact that when you buy jasmine rice from Lele, it's the same jasmine rice. The fact that when you buy jasmine rice from the Volta region, the possibility that what you get this week and what you get next month are going to be different is very high. How do we deal with this? And of course, now, so coming towards the end, since I have some 4 minutes. Now, what has been driving our food system? And here I will summarize this because as I give you the block points, I'm sure you can make some sense out of it. Now, first of all, we are not isolated. We are part of the global economy. So we are in a global world that has its own global political economy. And a political economy whereby some countries are much more powerful than others and whose policies end up defining what we all do and how we all behave. And of course, that is why we all end up with neoliberal systems. Unfortunately, neoliberal systems simply gives room for those who are powerful. So who ends up being the winners? The winners are those who are able to tell you what you should do and who you cannot tell what they should do. So as a result, EU can tell you that they don't want your vegetable because it contains some toxin. You have no way of even verifying it. Whilst you would eat their chicken even if it has been thawed many times. Whilst in the same EU, if chicken thaws once, it cannot be frozen again. But we are eating that every day. So there, of course, the orientation of our economy is more towards openness. Openness, right, which is supposed to link our farmers to their markets, which is supposed to be good. Unfortunately, your farmers do not have the same muscle as their farmers. Vertical networks can be abandoned, just as we saw with our traders do to farmers, the same thing. That you have contracts, right, that can easily be broken. You have pineapple farmers in Ghana who have lost massively because you have the retailers in the north severing those links. Of course, then what about national political economy? This is a reflection of the global political economy, right? We don't do things differently. We do what the whole system does. And we claim that it's because everyone is the same. It's a lie. It's simply because we are forced to do what the system tells us to do. But probably we can be smart. Within the system, it's possible to have some loopholes that you can, harvest for your own benefit. So as a result, the modern productivist model of agriculture that we are silently prioritizing, right? I mean, that silently prioritizes medium and large-scale farmers, which Ted talked about, is one of the trends that is killing us. And I would dare argue that government policy in Ghana, and for that matter, Africa, involves piecemeal interventions, right? And this is as a result of inadequate resources for holistic programs. So planting for food and jobs, for instance, right, is wonderful in concept. But in terms of coverage, right, how many farmers are we covering, right? So assuming that we have an appropriate conceptualization, still its impact will be low, simply because we don't have the resources to upscale it. And of course, local social drivers, and this was what was responsible for the fact that many of the regions are eating food from their regions. And I think this is wonderful. Even though this is beginning to shift, that we are beginning to become globalized citizens. You all want to go eat fried rice and noodles. And I wonder, who are those who eat those noodles in the night? I mean, don't you sleep? All right. Now, urbanization and demographic changes. Of course, this is a major driver of food system changes globally, and we all know how that works. As we get urbanized, it simply means that the more the flows between rural and urban goes up, and when rural areas are inadequate, it simply means that then we need a third option. That is what? Importation. And demographic changes also have to do with the different consumption demands. So you have your kids, for instance, who don't want to, my kids don't want to eat TZ, and I eat TZ almost, lunch, dinner, breakfast, anything. I'm ready to eat it. But they are not willing to eat TZ even, on a 2-day regime. So you have all these changes that are coming in. Environmental change, which we have, Prof. Ya's program, and several other programs have dealt with. And here I'm sad to realize that we have shifted the discourse more towards climate change and leaving out other equally crucial dimensions such as degradation of our vegetation, soils, and water resources. And I think this is something we have to return to. And technology, and this is where I would kindly urge our donors and policymakers that the desire for the sophisticated has to stop, right? The other time I heard of some big tractors, 2.2 billion old Ghana City tractors with all kind of huge equipments and, touch panels. Come on. This is a waste of our money. Go out there to BA and see what is it that is moving Ghana's agriculture. It is not that big, sophisticated Ford tractor. It is an old massive Ferguson, an old Ford. It is a thrasher that has been made by a blacksmith, a welder on the roadside. These are the things that are moving farming in Ghana. So we better leverage on what is moving farming rather than what is anticipated to move farming. So appropriate technology, back to an old concept. I don't know how we can make it relevant. All right. So basically what myself and my other Joseph have said is that the food systems of Ghana have changed dramatically, and they have changed in accordance with changing global and national exigencies. It is the drivers above global and national and regional levels that are moving what we are seeing. And basically our farmers will have to obey this logic, and they are highly adaptable. So as a result, they do their best. But as we can see, there are lots of difficulty in production and marketing. But we think that the distribution system, as I've already mentioned, holds promise as the catalyst of growth for both agriculture and industry, and has huge employment potentials. Therefore, policies to enhance smallholder farming should tackle more of the distribution component, dealing with transport, processing, storage, pricing, and harmonizing relations in marketing. I don't know how we'll do this, but I'm sure the policymakers will think of how to do it. How do we harmonize relations? How do we encourage people to see that this is exploitation? And of course, the team is happy with the concept of one district, one factory. But however, we think it needs a reconceptualization. We need to think about it given the fact that, one, the different regions, of course, different districts have got different needs in terms of, but beyond that, we want that it should be agro-based, right? Let's do what is doable, what is realistic. And beyond that, one district, one factory might seem too disaggregated. There are some things that you can do at district level only. So can we think about the benefits of economies of scale? And of course, these are things for reflection which we can look at during our discussion period. And here we have decided to have to point to areas that we think our peasant farmers and other bodies such as GAU and others should do. But I'll just mention one here. We need an Eat Ghana Act. How many of you would support that? Eat Ghana Act. That means that we don't use taxpayers' money to pay for Lele rice, right? You buy rice from Volta region or from Nalergu, right? And this is not in contravention of any rule because we have Fly America policy. That means that you can't use American taxpayers' money to join KLM. And of course, industrialization should be agro-based, right? Why do you want to do the impossible? Let's not go back and copy Nkrumah, right? Import substitution industries where all our raw materials and whatnot. Let's deal with things that need support. And then, of course, but there we have a caveat. We are saying that we should encourage majority shareholding local industries. If we don't do this, people will begin to be unhappy with the industries that come up. If you have Indians in a particular district making all the money, the local population in no time begins to feel bad about it. So how do we have a system whereby both, international and local investors are cooperating in a way that we think, And I am particularly interested in this last point, that we should please rethink corrupt and ill-conceived public-private partnerships. So far, most of these public-private partnerships are avenues for looting. And we bet it's high time that we think about serious reforms or even discourage them. After all, you have included and others who are doing well. All we need is that how do we give them the right incentives to grow? That is it. And of course, building farmer capacities that the PFAC has always been doing. And here we are saying, do not leave out productivity. Please, productivity is still a challenge. But let's bring in quality and food safety. Because of food safety, you have big guys in Accra, those who have the money, not buying local produce because they think that the watermelon I'm buying has just been sprayed with a pesticide, which will poison my kids. Let's get this mentality out of, And of course, the distributional challenges, we have a few thoughts on that. And as I've already mentioned, mechanization. Please, appropriate technology. Pay for prototypes. Government should pay for prototypes. Prototypes, what works elsewhere. And then, of course, building on successful strategies. Many things have worked well in Ghana. Many things have worked well in other West African countries. Why do we want to try something you don't know, only to fail again? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's, I call the tale of the two Josephs. I wonder what Madam Chair thinks about all that. So I'll invite her to give us her remarks, and when she's done, we'll take a break and come back and continue with our discussion. Let's welcome Madam Chair to give us her remarks.
Right. Let me start by commending the people who initiated this whole concept, the idea of calling this meeting. I think it's a great idea. And I also like to commend those who are delivering the conference, the 4 organizations that have come together, plus the 2 organizations, OSF and Oxfam, who are making this possible through their funding. I do not intend to repeat the excellent presentations that have been given. And I think both of them have left us in no doubt at all of the extreme importance of the issues we are talking about. We are told that the food we eat, the bulk of it is coming from smallholder farmers. Why is it that these are the poorest groups in Ghana? Why is it that those who are extremely important for our survival, those are the people suffering? And I always go back to countries like Switzerland, where I lived for some time, and where farmers are the most rich people in the country. And then you come here, and I go to my village, and I see the struggles, and I see the end result, what a farmer goes through to till the land, to plant, to grow, and what they get at the end. Very, very little. So I do hope that this meeting will bring out some of the issues and then go on to recommend solutions, and don't let it end in this hall, but let it go to the people who can make a difference. I was delighted by some of the things I've learned this morning. The fact that when you go into the production, there's actually a lot being produced. Because I used to think that the problem is to encourage more of the youth to go into agricultural productivity, which is true, but We've been told that there's a lot of production going on, but there are a lot of losses between the farm gate and where it gets to the consumer. We are told there are big problems with distribution. And interestingly, these are problems that can be solved. For example, why should the police delay trucks carrying food to the extent that these perish? The government can come out with a policy that any vehicle carrying foodstuff should not be stopped by the police. We can implement this, can't we? So police cannot stop a vehicle carrying food. Let them go through so the food gets to where it can get to. I was delighted to hear the opportunities in the whole distribution spectrum. Every day we hear about young graduates with no jobs. We are accused that we are probably not training them the right way, and that's why they don't have jobs. And as I sat here listening to Professor Yaro, I was saying to myself, I wish I was a little younger, because there are so many opportunities that I could go out there and make a lot of money. So I think we should take this information out there, spread the gospel, and let them know that there are opportunities. Ghanaians, we love trading, don't we? Every street you walk along, there are people selling something. But instead of selling Chinese gadgets, let's go to the farmers and let's help them to bring the food packaged properly to the consumers. Our food engineers and food scientists, unfortunately I don't see anybody in this room, but I think you need to talk to our engineering faculty. What are they doing? How can they help us to package the food properly so that it will be attractive to you and I? So I can go on and on and on this, because I have really enjoyed your presentation, and I sincerely hope that we'll have a way to get this to the places where the action can take place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam. And like her, I'm sure you also have your take on the presentation, the research findings. But we'll take a break. We've been sitting for a while. For those who came very early, they've been sitting for 4 hours. So let's take a break so we can stretch our legs, grab something to munch on, and then we come back re-energized to talk about the issues in the research findings. Thank you.